Chapter 28. Murray. The second floor of the police station was deserted. Most of the back office staff didn't work weekends, and those who did were already on leave. Only the superintendent office was occupied, with the boss himself on a call and his PA typing a report without a single glance at her fingers. She had tinsel in her hair and was wearing bauble earrings that flashed distractingly. The super needs case papers typing up, she said. She had explained when Murray had wondered what she was doing at work on a Sunday morning and Christmas Eve to boot. He wants everything shipshape before the break. Doing something nice tomorrow, she said now. Just a quiet one at home. There was a pause. You, he added, when it became clear she was waiting for the question. Off to Mum's and Dad. She stopped typing and leaned her folded arms on the desk. We all still have stockings, even though my brother's 24. We open those first, then we have smoked salmon and scrambled eggs with Bucks Fizz. Murray smiled and nodded as she took him through the traditions of her family Christmas. He wondered how long his frolicking was going to last. The front door opened. Murray, sorry to keep you waiting. No problems, Murray committed the sir, not only because he was a civilian now and no longer bound by rank, but because with Leah Griffiths had been a probationer and Murray, his tutor, constable, the younger man had been a grade A turd. There were two easy chairs in Leah's office, but the superintendent sat at his desk, and so Murray took the wooden chair across from him. An expanse of polished wood lay between them, on which Leo pushed around the paper clips that justified his salary. Leo laced his fingers together and leaned back in the chair. I'm a little confused. He wasn't, of course, but the superintendent liked to show his working out, which tended to draw out the process somewhat. Night turn attendant and indecent just before midnight last night, where they spoke to Mr. Mark Hemmings and his partner, Miss Anna Johnson. Ah, so it was indeed about the Johnson case. A brick was thrown through a bedroom window. It had a threatening note wrapped around it. So I heard. A few of the houses in the street have their own secure cameras, so it would be worth all in hand, thank you. Leo interrupted smoothly. I'm more concerned about the fact that Miss Johnson's reported the incident as part of an ongoing series. He paused for dramatic effect. An ongoing series being investigated by you. Murray said nothing. You could tie yourself up in not saying something for the sake of it. Filling gaps, ask a question, Leo, and then I'll answer it. The pause went on forever. And what I'm confused about, Murray, is that I was under the impression you were a station duty officer, a civilian station duty officer, and that you retired from CID and indeed from the police service several years ago. No comment. A hint of annoyance had crept into Leo's voice. He was having to work far harder than he used to. Murray, are you investigating a crime series involving two historic suicides? I'm not, no. They were murders, not suicides. Then what exactly have you been doing? Anna Johnson came in to the front counter on Thursday to discuss some concerns she had over her parents' sudden deaths, both of which occurred last year. I spent some time answering her question. Murray gave Leah a benign smile. Of one of the objectives in my PDR is to deliver high level of customer service, sir. Leo narrowed his eyes. Night Turn said she received a malicious communication, an anonymous card delivered on the anniversary of her mother's death. There's nothing in the system. Why didn't you generate a crime report? What offence would that have been? Murray asked politely. There was no threat in the card, no abuse. It was upsetting, of course, but it wasn't illegal. There was a long pause while Leo digested this information. A brick through a window? It's a criminal act, interrupted Murray smoothly, and I'm sure the attending officers would do an excellent job investigating it. Miss Johnson seems to think her mother's suicide was, in fact, murder. So I understand. Murray gave a polite smile. Of course, it was a CID team here who looked at the case last year. Leo looked at Murray, assessing whether the insinuation had been intentional. If you told Murray off for not taking the job to CID, there was an implicit criticism that the original investigation had been mishandled. Murray waited. Write up your involvement so far and pass everything up to CID for them to take a proper look at it. Understand? Perfectly. Murray stood and not waiting to be dismissed. Merry Christmas indeed. And Murray, yes, stick to your own job. Murray hadn't lied to the superintendent yet, and he wasn't going to start now. Don't worry, Leo. He gave the boss a cheery smile. I won't do anything I'm not qualified to do. Downstairs, Murray found an empty report writing room and closed the door before logging onto the computer. He had given back his force laptop when he retired, and there were a few more checks he wanted to do before he went home for Christmas. If Leo Griffiths had the newest to look at Murray's internet activity, it could be easily explained away as essential information required for the write-up he would have to put together for CID. He looked at Oakview on the command and control system that logged every call made to police. This basic check would have been done by the regional investigating officers, but there were no prints out in the archive file, and Murray wanted to be thorough. He was looking for break-ins, harassment, suspicious activity connected to Oakview or the Johnsons, anything that might suggest Tom and Caroline had been targeted prior to their deaths. Oakview appeared several times over the years since computerized records had been kept. Twice, a silent 999 call had been made from the address. Each time, control room had called back and given the same explanation. Occupant apologizes. Toddler was playing with phone. Murray checked the date on the log, 10th of February 2001. Toddler? Anna Johnson would have been 10, too old to be making accidental phone calls. Had there been a toddler in the house, or were the silent 999 calls a little cry for help? In 2008, control room had received a call from a neighbour, Robert Drake, who reported hearing a disturbance next door. Murray looked through the log. Caller state he can hear shouting, sounds of broken glass, possible domestic units dispatched. No crime had been recorded. All quiet on arrival, details taken. Both occupants deny any domestic incident. Caroline Johnson had appeared emotional, Murray noted, but there were scant details in their brief log, and without tracking down the attending officers and hoping they would recall an incident that occurred more than a decade ago, that was all he had to go on. It was enough. Murray was starting to build up a picture of the Johnsons, and it wasn't the one the daughter had portrayed. Perhaps Tom's brother, Billy Johnson, would throw more light on proceedings. Murray looked at his watch. Bloody Leo Griffith and his posturing. He'd be late to collect Sarah if he didn't go now. She'd be emotionally fraught enough as it was today. Even the tiniest change of plans would knock her off her kilter. I'll come with you. Murray had just made it in time, only for Sarah to immediately ask after the Johnson case and insist on accompanying him to see Billy. They'll keep till after Christmas. Murray put the car in gear and slowly drove down out of Highgrave. It felt good to Sarah in the car to know he wasn't going home to an empty house. It's fine, honestly. It's practically on our way home anyway. Murray stole a glance at his wife. Even in the car, she didn't sit properly. One foot was tucked beneath the knee of her other leg. She held the seatbelt away from her neck with one hand, her elbow resting on the bottom of the window. If you're sure, I'm sure. Johnson's cars had been given a facelift since Murray had bought his Volvo. There was still the same motley collection of part exchange bangers parked around the back, but most of the forecourt was filled with gleaming Jags, Audis, and BMWs, the most expensive angle on ramps that made the car look like they were about to make a break for it. 10 minutes, he said. No rush. Sarah took off her seatbelt and opened her book. Murray pocketed the keys, automatically scanning the inside of the car for anything that might present a risk. She's been discharged, he reminded himself as he walked away. Relax. He looked back as he crossed the forecourt, but Sarah was engrossed in her book. Clean-shaven, cells wrapped, circled like sharks, two homing in on him from opposite directions, both with their eye on their commission. A gangly lad with a shock of ginger hair reached him first. His gold legs peeled off towards a sharply dressed couple, wandering hand in hand along a line of convertible. A far safer bet, Murray thought. Billy Johnson? In the office. The ginger lad jerked his head towards the showroom. But perhaps I can assist. His smile was all truth and no sincerity. He cocked his head on one side, making a show of appraising Murray. Considering. Volvo man, am I right? Considering Murray had just got out of precisely such a car, this insight was less impressive than he might have been. He kept walking. Through here, is it? Ginger shrugged, his shiny smile vanishing with his chances of a sale. Yeah. Shannon on the desk. Get him for you. Shannon had a face 2 degrees darker than her neck, and lips so glossy Mara could see the reflection in them. She was standing behind a large curved reception desk, tinsel taped to her side, setting out glasses on a tray for a Christmas Eve tipple. She smiled as he approached. Welcome to Johnson's car. How can I help you? She rattled off so fast Mara had to pause for a second to process what she had heard. I'd like to see Billy Johnson, please. I'm from Sussex Police. I'll see if he's free. She teetered on pointed toe heels that couldn't possibly be the same shape as her feet. Click clack across the polished floor to her boss's office. Tinted glass meant Mara couldn't see inside, and he looked out of the vast showroom windows instead, wishing he'd been able to park the Volvo a little closer. The angle meant he couldn't see Sarah. He glanced at his watch. He'd already taken 3 of the 10 minutes he'd promised he'd be. Come through, mister. Janine appeared in the doorway, trailing off as she realised she'd forgotten to ask Murray's name. Murray Mackenzie. He smiled at the receptionist as she passed him and walked into an impressive office housing 2 large desks. Billy Johnson stood up. His forehead glistened, and when he shook Murray's hand, it was warm and clammy. He didn't smile, and he didn't offer Murray a seat. CID, eh? Murray didn't set him straight. To what do we owe the pleasure? Our last break-in was 6 months ago, so that's a piss poor response time, even by your standard. The smile implied a joke. The words lacked. Billy Johnson was generous of stomach, portly rather than fat, and not unattractive with it. Murray supposed, although what did he know? He wore a well-cut suit, highly polished shoes, and a bright yellow tie that matched the stripes on his white-collar shirt. The defensiveness was undoubtedly due to stress, not aggression. Nevertheless, Murray stayed within striking distance of the door. If it's about the VAT, it isn't. Billy relaxed a little. I'm making inquiries about the death of your brother and his wife. You're the officer Annie has been dealing with? You're her uncle, I believe. Even through Billy's distress, his affection for Anna was evident. His eyes softened and he nodded repeatedly, as though the action reinforces the fact. Such a lovely girl. This has all been very hard for her. For all of you, Prophet Murray. Yes, of course, but for Annie. He pulled a large white handkerchief from his pocket and wiped at his brow. I'm sorry, it's been a rather emotional morning. Please sit down. He sank down into a leather swivel chair. She convinced herself Tom and Caroline were murdered. Murray paused. I think she's right. Christ. Through the window behind Billy, Murray caught sight of a familiar figure meandering through the rows of cars. Sarah, 20 yards behind her, walking as swiftly as if it was possible to walk without running, was Ginger. Were you close to Tom, Mr. Johnson? Murray spoke quietly, half an eye on the forecourt. Billy frowned. We were brothers. You got on well? He seemed irritated by the question. We were brothers. We had each other's back, but we got each other's backs up too. You know what I mean? Business partners too, I understand? Billy nodded. Dad had dementia and couldn't run the business anymore, so Tom and I took over in 1991. Family, he added, as though that explained everything. There was an open checkbook in front of him next to a pile of envelopes and printed lists. He shuffled the envelopes together and needlessly, nodding to the checkbook. Christmas bonus, more than normal, but that's life. How did you get on with Caroline? A crimson flush crept over the man's neck. She ran the desk. Tom looked after that side of things and managed the sales team. Murray noted that Billy had answered his question. He didn't push it. He wasn't supposed to be there at all. The last thing Murray knew was another complaint to Leah Griffiths. He tried another tack. Did they have a good relationship? Billy looked out the window as though deciding whether or not to impart whatever was in his head. Ginger was steering Sarah towards a defender with a POA sign dangling from the rearview mirror. Murray hoped she was okay. Hoped Ginger wouldn't say anything to set her off. Billy turned back to Murray. He didn't treat her right. He was my brother and I loved him, but he wasn't good enough for her. Murray waited. There was obviously a story behind this. He liked to drink. Well, we all do, but Billy shook his head. This isn't right. Speaking of the dead, it isn't right. Are you suggesting Tom had a problem with alcohol, Mr. Johnson? There was a long pause before Billy spoke. He looked out of the window. Caroline tried to cover for him, but I'm not stupid, even if Tom thought I was. This last was said bitterly, muttered more to himself than to Murray. Behind him, Murray saw Ginger open the driver's door of the Defender. Sarah settled herself behind the wheel and adjusted the seat. Ginger would have her out on a test drive if Murray didn't leave soon. He stood up. You've been very helpful, Mr. Johnson. Thank you. Murray felt bad at leaving the man slumped at his desk, visibly distressed by the memories Murray had forced him to confront, but his priority was Sarah. She was walking towards him as he got to the forecourt. Ginger was standing by the defender, hands thrust miserably in his pockets. Are you okay? Murray said when Sarah reached him. She seemed perfectly content, and he breathed a sigh of relief that Ginger hadn't upset her. Right as rain, she had a wicked grin on her face, and Murray glanced again at Ginger, who looked as though someone had just told him Christmas had been cancelled. What happened to him? I told him I was interested in the latest model. Right. That I wanted something very high specs with lots of extras, and that I was looking to take something away today. Okay. Sarah grinned again, and then I said maybe I'd stick with my bike.